Hey, hey, welcome to Northern Echoes. And if you're just joining us for the first time, which I don't believe you are, Northern Echoes tells the stories and holds up the stories of the artists, the touring crew, and all those people that support Canadian music in the industry. And today we have some special guests with us, and I'm very, very excited about this. And I'll whiff through the bio real quick. Josh and Andy from the Skydiggers, first and foremost, thank you so much for giving us the time and space to spend with us today.
Pleasure, Mark.
To tell the story of the Skydiggers is to tell the story of a thriving musical collaboration that was born in friendship and has abided with trust. Over the course of 15 studio albums and countless miles and hours on the road, Skydiggers has grown from enthusiastic youngsters into husbands, fathers, and mentors. And while band members have changed over the decade, Josh Folken Finlinson and Andy Mays remain its beating heart, with new collaborations bringing the unique musical histories into the circle. The sound of the Skydiggers continuously evolves. And Josh, I
what a
added,
word salad.
Yeah, really good. And Josh, I added that little adverb in between from a T-shirt I saw. That was made up for you. Yeah. And we will talk about how you got that a little later on. But again, guys, thank you so much. We met 30 odd plus years ago at the 1993 Juno Awards. We had a chance to talk and connect. And recently I saw the Skydiggers playing a show up in Collingwood at Anna's Place, Studio 79, which we've also done a podcast from. And you know, it's so good to reconnect with you guys along the journey, right? And these important, I believe in the circle, right? Just as you know, these things come around every once in a while. So when you guys got together earlier on, do you want to just take us back and give us a quick 101 and how you met and formed the group?
Sure. Well, I can start. Andy and I grew up in the same neighborhood in Toronto. Andy and my brother Neil were the same age, a few years older than I am. And I would have met Andy probably about 1970-ish.
Yeah.
Neil and Andy played hockey together and went to school together. So that's where we would have met initially. And our folks were friends. They ran in a similar social circle and did stuff together. So, I mean, I've known him since I was 6-7 years old.
Did was Euchre on that social circle back then?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it was probably more
Bridge?
a drink or two.
Was it a cocktail or two?
Cocktail or two.
And high school. So high school, where give a shout out to the high school, just so we can kind of.
North Toronto Collegiate Institute.
Collegiate.
Also produced a couple of fellas from Blue Rodeo.
Yep.
Jim Cuddy and Greg Keeler both went to North Toronto.
It's a close fraternity all the way up from growing up here in Canada for artists and touring musicians.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Yeah. And then so you started the band with like the Cashes?
Well, what happened was Josh was in a high school band called the Ramblers, and they went off to England after high school for a couple of years to make their fame and fortune. And I had gone to McMaster and met some guys there and started or joined a band called Directive 17 with a K. And so when both of those bands kind of finished in around 84, 85, Josh was back in Canada, and we started getting together and just playing acoustically, one guitar, two voices, and then we started going out to open mic nights and a couple of classrooms, and our whole thing became about we wanted to be able to go and play for anyone, anywhere, at any time. Whereas in the bands we had been in, we'd have to have drums and full kit in order to
full production
in order to make it happen. So we stripped it right back down to
and it's been very, very successful that that way to be able to adapt to different situations and circumstances and sounds.
And it's still great to be able to do it.
Yeah.
You know, like to pull a guitar out anywhere, or a piano, whatever, and to be able to perform and connect with people is still that's a great agility to have.
Intimacy with your audience is a huge touch point, right? So, that comes across, you write songs. What drove you to kind of go, this is actually, this is what I want to do, right? I want to be an artist. When did that speak to you?
I wanted to be in a band.
Cool.
I didn't want to be an artist. I wanted to be in a band. I fell in love, with, in the late 70s, I'd be going to the Cabana Room and hearing the hi-fis, who were Jim and Greg from North Toronto, and a fellow named Jim Sublett on drums, who was also from North Toronto. And then I discovered, going around the city, I kept seeing this name, L'Étranger, everywhere, postered, graffiti, and I thought, I'm going to go see this band, and I fell in love with L'Étranger, which is Andrew Cash and Charlie Angus. Mm-hmm. And so I just started. I got the live bug as a fan, going out to hear live music. And my parents at the time were living around Castlefranc and Bloor, and I had dropped out of university, and I was working in a factory making mufflers, and it was a 5-minute walk from the Hotel Isabella. And every night at the Hotel Isabella, seven days a week, there was the Cameo Lounge upstairs, which often had a blues band. Malcolm Tomlinson, great singer, Cameo Blues Band. And down in the basement, they'd have bands. There's a band that I used to love called the Grotty Beats, who were playing Beatles, but they didn't dress up, and they weren't, they weren't mimicking the Beatles. There were no Liverpool accents between songs or that sort of thing. They were just playing the songs straight up, and it was
for the music, not
for the music,
not for the tribute.
Not for the tribute. They were great, and I would go over there 2 or 3 times a week to hear live music, and then on the weekends there'd be stuff at the Cabana Room. There'd be, eventually the Horseshoe. It was a great time, late 70s, early 80s. To be a music fan, and I loved it, and I couldn't get enough of it, and I eventually realized that I wanted to be a part of it, and bands like hearing bands like the Clash and the Sex Pistols made me realize that it was possible to be almost musically illiterate. Mm-hmm. Not to be able to play an instrument very well, but to be able to express oneself through music, and that was exciting. And then it just, eventually started playing in bands, and then Josh and I stripped it back down so we could build it back up again into a band, and that's how we arrived here 35 years later.
That's a good foundation, right, to be able to do that, go back and forth. Charlie Angus is now retired from politics.
Yes, he has.
And he's banding again.
Yeah. Grievous Angels.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who were contemporaries of ours.
Yeah.
Peers of ours. We would do festivals together and that sort of thing, shows together.
Josh, you?
Well, I grew up, I'm the youngest. We're both the youngest of 3 boys. And everyone in my family played music. So I didn't realize this when I was young, but in retrospect, I realized that was because I had 2 brothers that played at both at pretty high levels, both classical music, and my mom played piano. I just assumed that anyone could play an instrument, and I think that gave me a bit of a false sense of confidence that I could play an instrument. And there were guitars around the house, and there was a piano, and there's always lots of music playing. And I think it just became, in high school for me, it became it helped form an identity for me. It gave me a certain confidence and expression at a time where that's a helpful thing. And I played mostly on my own, and I played with some friends. But then, towards the end of high school, I was recruited by. He wasn't a friend at the time, like he wasn't an enemy, but he was.
Friend to me.
He was just someone that played music and had played in a band, and he, for some reason, recruited me to play in a band that he wanted to start, which is the band that Andy mentioned, the Ramblers, that moved over to England. And and it was a great experience for me because he asked me to play bass in that band, which I had been playing guitar up until that point, maybe a little bit of piano. But it gave me a good understanding of what playing in a band was about, and collaborating and trying to achieve some sort of, unity of sound.
Cohesion.
Cohesion, yeah, thank you. And so, and then moving to England, just that was such a great life experience for me, and musical experience. I met a lot of really interesting people. I mean, we moved right out of high school in what was a very middle class part of Toronto. We ended up squatting in Brixton, and that was there was a real eye opener. And at an age where you think you're invincible and nothing can happen to you, and so for me, I think it was shaping my identity to how to express myself, and it's been a gradual evolution as well. And when I came back to Toronto, I knew I'd heard about someone who was working in a music shop that was putting a recording studio together, and in 1984, 85, that was unusual. It was not like today where you have, anyone can, with a computer can have a
digital
studio.
Has changed
Yeah.
the whole. Analog was a true love, right?
Yeah.
And there are multiple pieces to an analog setup, right?
And so I'd heard about this guy. His name was Wayne Stokes, and Wayne ended up being the original drummer on our first two records, and certainly a big influence on the way the band sounded and evolved. And I met Wayne, and we ended up renting a house together, and at the same time, I reconnected with Andy, and we started playing music together and writing songs and recording. But Wayne had a kind of grander vision of what he wanted to do, and I think for Andy and I, we just wanted to get out and start performing, which we had both done a fair bit of up until that point. So we started going out and doing what Andy was saying, playing open mics and schoolrooms and wherever we could play. Cottages, yeah. And eventually, Andy was also singing with Andrew Cash at the Spadina Hotel, and on a Monday night in the beverage room, which was maybe a 70 seat room on street level, just off the, and it was Andrew invited me up to sing a couple of songs with Andy, and Andrew went off to make his first recording, and we took the evening over, and slowly the band sort of was pieced together over, really, I think, over the course of about a year and a half, a couple of different residencies that we did there.
A good growing ground.
It was great.
Yeah.
It was we every week, because it was every week, we felt, we have to come up with a new gag or a new song or something. So we would rehearse probably a couple of times and incorporate more music or covers or new songs. And so that was a good, that was a really good kind of workshopping foundation.
Yeah, and people was doing what you guys did too. Hey, listen, if you're looking for somebody to join the band for a song, maybe you could bring them, so that collaboration got a little, your circles probably got a little wider in that sense.
Yeah, we would have people come open up, do
Yeah.
a few songs, and it did become this real community. We had a friend who was still a writer, and he had this little like newspaper. It's called the
Monday Number.
The Monday Number, and he would
That sounds like a song, actually.
yeah.
And he would write something up every week, just one sheet, get them printed off, and
Pass them around.
and
Old days.
Yeah.
The good old days.
and it was kind of it was prose, and he was kind of writing about music, and it was kind of hip jargon at times, and it was just he's a poet, and he was just finding his voice as well at the same time that we were finding ours. So it was fun. It was a nice community.
You wanted to be in a band.
Yes, yes, I did. I fell in love with rock and roll, and I wanted to be. I wanted to join the circus
And go and tour the country.
and just tour the
Grand ambition.
tour the bars.
Yeah.
Just play.
When so you obviously you collaborated there. You grew into, and it was a natural harmonization, vocally between you two.
Mm-hmm.
And probably creatively between you two and the assembled people that you'd been with.
And Wayne Stokes and Peter Cash were a big part of the vocal
Absolutely.
sound of the band as well. Huge.
So when we think about music and live music, it's the instrumentation that drives people physically, right? And I think it's the lyric that moves people emotionally, and then that collaborates for the full-on experience.
Mm-hmm.
The songwriting process, did that, you know what I mean? How did that transpire? Like, I'm not, and I don't mean it in a way of, okay, so how do you write a song, blah, blah, blah. When did you feel that, hey, you know what? I've got some emotion to put out there on paper and in a song.
Well, I think Josh and I had already been in situations in groups where songwriting was going on. But when the two of us got together and just started playing with Josh on guitar and both of us singing, we started learning traditional songs. A lot of there was a Doc Watson record that we learned several songs from, and we were singing Hank Williams songs, and so we just wanted to go right back to the simplicity of a lot of that traditional folk and country music, and then because it's beautiful in its simplicity, but it's melodic, and it's emotionally, you connect with a lot of those songs, and so that's how we started, and then we started writing, finding our own voice, because at first Josh would come up with guitar ideas, chord structures, and then I would come up with melody and lyric. That's how we started. So it kind of came out of that dive into traditional music.
And that's the foundation in itself, right?
That's
So
the foundation of the whole
yeah,
band.
Yeah. So that the influences of those songs, you know what I mean, what you gravitated to at that time, transcends into probably how you're going to write as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. So, and it's always, okay, I've got a hook, right? You know what I mean? Like 4 chords and the truth. I got a hook.
I mean, a great example of what Andy's talking about is we covered an old traditional song called Tom Dooley. But we had, I think I came up with a guitar riff and a chord progression that Andy sang a different melody over, but with the same words. And it's basically like an old murder ballad ish. It's a story song. It's and that was probably consciously or unconsciously opening a window into what was ahead of us in terms of how we could unpack writing songs and evolving ourselves as songwriters and as musicians.
and I've talked to a lot of musicians, people in bands, and songwriters, and being known for being a songwriter is something that you hold very kind of close to you as a, you know what I mean? That means a lot, right? If you get recognized as a songwriter, right?
And when Peter Cash joined the group, he brought a lot of songs of his own with him. He, on the first several records, he's writing almost half the records. Yeah, he had a whole I don't know, trunk full of material that he'd been recording on his brother's 4-track cassette machine for years. He had this stuff stored up. So for us, it was a revelation.
And and I think it was also served as a catalyst and a inspiration. And you know, it's now again looking back on it, as you talk about, you know, songwriting, you know, holding it close. I think it's also, you know, it is a bit of a leap of faith to hang that shingle on your door. You know, you're exposing yourself to any kind of reaction.
Yeah.
And but also, I think for both of us, the band became a great vehicle for that, and continues to be, because there's between us, you know, a good idea or a bad idea will endure, and you know, it's the arc of 35 years of writing songs and being creative has always been the consistent.
Let's hope the bad ideas don't endure too long.
Well, they typically don't. They just sort of, they just.
You got to have bad to
stop
know what
dead.
good is.
Well,
No,
you-
totally.
you
No,
know,
no one has only good ideas. No
Yeah,
one does.
you have to let it play out, and that's something that I've learned over time, because I was always too quick off the mark with I don't like that, or you know, and it's like that. You gotta.
Let's just see where this
Exactly.
goes,
You
right?
gotta
Sometimes,
give
like, you
things-
just got to throw something at the wall, even
Yep.
sometimes, and
Yep.
just go.
Yeah.
It's to Josh's point. You know, you're holding that creative process in, and it's vulnerable when you're going sometimes through that process, right? And to put it out there is kind of like you put it out there and you close your eyes and you're like,
Yeah, is it any good? Is it
yeah,
worthy? Is
nobody's
it,
gonna like it. Or,
yeah, I mean, it's like that's why I said there's a real leap of faith in it. But you know, I think also, I think equally as important in the writing process is how a singer sings a song, and you know, it's something from when we started playing together. I think Andy really had an identity in his voice, and you know, maybe people like his voice, maybe they don't, but it's very him. It's very genuine.
It's
to
distinctive.
him. It's distinctive, and that's a great place to be starting from, and you know, that's all.
That's the sound,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's the Skydigger sound.
and
It's,
it's kind of undeniable.
Yeah.
and that's
it harmonizes. Your voice actually, in my view, harmonizes with itself, right? And it's easy to harmonize with,
That's interesting.
right? So it's a good thing.
Phew.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and that give, you know, you look at any bands, every singer has a distinct kind of voice, right? Where when you hear it, you go, okay, I know who it is, like kind of right away, right? And that helps in the identity process.
Except maybe the Beach Boys.
Well, that was harmony.
Well, Mike Love had a distinctive voice, but the other guys were such great blenders. Hey,
Yeah.
because there's not a lot of vibrato or anything there. When you hear the Beach Boys vocals broken down, you know, without any a cappella, without any instruments, it's amazing how kind of when I say flat, I don't mean tuning wise. I just mean there's no vibrato in their voices when they sing harmony together.
Yeah.
So it blends perfectly. Because
Beach Boys were actually my first concert ever, my sister took me to
That's
see
awesome.
them at the Canadian National Exhibition in the grandstand.
Wow. Was Brian playing?
Brian was playing.
Yeah.
I was 13, I think. And it's the first time I smelled burnt bananas. And it just, you know what I mean? It was Endless Summer Days.
Yeah.
That masterpiece.
Yeah.
Right? That album that's a masterpiece. You know, so that the Beach Boys were
Undeniable.
Yep. I don't think a lot of people don't give them enough credit. You know what I mean? I know they're not in the same league as the Beatles or anything like that, but there's definitely a spot for that.
Huge.
Introduced us all to the Southern California sound.
Yep.
Right?
Huge.
I don't know. Do you think there would have been Eagles if there wasn't Beach Boys?
Well, I mean, I would even argue the Beatles were very inspired and influenced by
Yeah.
By Brian
Beatles.
Wilson.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
For sure.
Yeah. Especially the harmonies too, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, and the 35 years, is songwriting become any easier?
I don't know. Easy. I mean, sometimes songs come more quickly than other times. But more often they're just like puzzles that you're struggling to put together, or you put it away for a day or a week or a year. Sometimes it's always different. It's and it's I mean, I thoroughly enjoy it. It's still probably the thing I enjoy most in the creative process. It's because it can always be different, and it can always be elusive, and it can always be satisfying and
It's
frustrating.
always a bit of a surprise.
And absolutely. When it
It's
all
like,
comes
where
together.
did that come from?
And in the spirit of collaboration, it's often interesting when you're not sure about an idea and you have a partner, a collaborator, that often brings out the idea in a way that you didn't anticipate or think about. That's a great thing about having a collaboration.
Yeah, and to help you through that hump, that, you know what I mean?
Or to recognize.
I can't get by here,
Yeah.
right? Mm-hmm. And I guess sometimes you got to put it away, and you can pull it out, like you said, a year later and go, or you can pull out a lyric and go, I got a lyric that fit. I've had this line stuck in my head forever, and it'll fit in this tune. Whereas sometimes you probably pull out the line and go, okay, this is a starting point. Let's go from here.
And I can think of several songs where I could have almost a complete song, but I didn't have a lyric or a melody for something, and I would play it to Andy, and he would come up with something that elevated the idea and took it somewhere else, and I love that, and those songs kind of occupy a special place in our catalog, to me anyway.
Some of those songs, as an example?
There's a song of ours called California, which I love that collaboration. You Sparkle Silver is another song. Those are two that come to mind for me right away. I know there's others, but those come to mind.
Quickest song that you ever wrote between the two of you? One day.
Anything for you?
Yeah,
Pretty quick, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's a good example. Another actually great collaboration.
It's a
too.
beautiful tune.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like I'm a fan of the songwriting, right? I'm a fan of some of the storytelling as well, and there's some political. When you get to a situation, there's the song about Northern Ontario. That's a situational song, right?
November in Ontario.
Yeah, November in Ontario. Was that based on a historical actuality, or?
Yes, that was my wife's great uncle who died in a hunting accident, and we were up. My wife is from Ottawa, and we have a cottage in Quebec, about an hour north of Ottawa. And early on, I know our kids were young, or our two older kids were young, and she told me the story about her uncle, and it was really stormy that night. It was a big thunderstorm, and she told me the story, which I didn't entirely know, but it kind of freaked me out. And she went to sleep, and our son Martin was young, and he fell asleep, and I was like, for some reason, completely absorbed in this story and the storm and all these. And I wrote just the story. It was just like, again, it was like, to me, it's like an old sort of folk ballad.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not entirely accurate, like I think it, most
Artistic
of it is.
license.
Yeah, I didn't really know. I also didn't, I think I was probably stoned, and when she told me it, and so I wrote whatever I wrote. But I remember it because we were leaving, we were playing at West, and my wife drove me down to the airport in Ottawa, and I was flying out. We were playing somewhere at West, and I finished writing all the words, and I sort of had a melody in mind. And when I finally got to a guitar, it all kind of came together, but it really was like a folk song. But when we recorded it, we made it more like it evolved, which I was totally into. It was almost like a Crazy Horse, a Neil Young.
Yeah, that's a rock song.
Yeah.
Yeah, because but that rock feel to it, that steel and that guitar feel to it, gives it that cold day in November, man, kind of feel, right?
Yeah, and that was, I mean, that record and that, that band, that version of the band, that was just after Peter Cash had left the band, and we had Paul McLeod to join the band with us, and Gavin Brown drummed on that record, and that really gave us such a kick in the ass as a band, and really elevated us into another
genre as well.
Genre and
Direction.
Just, I'll speak for myself. I was trying to keep up with those two. They were really good musicians.
It's a good thing to have, right?
Yeah, no, it was great. It was what the band needed, whether we were aware of it or not at the time. So they really brought something to the band and to that record for us.
Speaking of getting high, the line, I went out to smoke a joint and I forgot to come back in. Mm-hmm. I love that line. Where did that come from?
I don't know. I don't know. I can't remember. It's just a line in the song.
There's a different song now, right?
Yeah, it's in a song called "Fall Apart."
Yeah,
which was from Bittersweet Harmony, which we released in 2003. I don't know. I don't really know where the line came from.
It's a perfect line.
I mean, I will write out ideas, and then I will sometimes take a line from this idea and mix it with a line from that idea, and that's one of the songs that's not necessarily like November in Ontario, which is
storytelling.
Which is storytelling. It's more, I don't know, kind of abstract painting with words, finding words that sound interesting or good, and
sing well.
Yeah.
It helps.
Yeah.
But it's also left the interpretation when you write, and you're not doing a storytell song, right? The interpretation's always in the listeners. Kind of, you're floating stuff for them to be able to make up their own, which happens so often. And 60% of the time is what you wrote the song to mean to be. When somebody listens to it, it's not the same thing. But
once it's out there, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to the listener. They can make of it what they will,
and that's okay.
Yeah,
that's part of the collaboration.
That's totally, absolutely.
Yeah. That's part of the risk you take.
Yeah, it's yours now. Run with it. Go with it. It's yours now.
Yeah.
I would add, Mark, as well. Like, I think, and this is, Andy may have a different take on this, but I know that over the years, and it's not just a music, any artist, a big part of what you have to learn to do is to let go. Like, okay, I've reached the end of the road here with this idea. I can hold it back and not put it out. But I think you have to say, okay, I've done this. It's time to move on. And I think that's such an important part of the creative process. And that's also sometimes a great thing about having collaborators. Just, okay, it's time to knock it on the head, or it's time to move on.
Yeah, I've held on to it, and it's not going to be enjoyable if I hold on to it anymore, right?
And it's just Andy always would say this, recordings are like markers of where you're at the time. And even lyrically, you could write a song and then 6 months later, 10 years later, you think about what that was really about or what you were trying to say. And even for yourself, it could be often quite different than what you thought you were saying at the time.
Right. Absolutely. It had the same phrasing, different.
But the meaning often.
The meaning can evolve over time, even though the words stay the same. The meaning can evolve. It's just you're not the same person. I'm not the same person I was 35 years ago when Josh and I started playing and singing together, and yet there are songs that we still perform that we wrote 35 years ago, and that was always our goal, was to create something that we could play whatever age we were. I guess we were trying, and it's up to others to judge this, but we were trying to create songs that were timeless, that fit into the continuum of the music that we loved growing up, timeless in a way that Neil Young is timeless, or
the band,
or that you can listen to something and it could be 100 years old, or it could be. A
good song is a good song.
Yeah, that's what we've tried to do.
Everything's
been in service of the song.
Did you feel like, in those moments, it's a full circle kind of like, that was well worth, we haven't even talked about the endless time on the road, the sacrifice of, you're being a working musician isn't, fame and fortune, and
it's not all brisket and blowjobs, is it, Mark?
It is.
That's a Mordecai Richler line. He lobbed that one into me. I couldn't resist.
Perfect. Good hit.
There is certainly.
Well, that's that blind ambition for getting into a band.
There is the gratification of a response from an audience, which, music is communication. And when you're recording, you're communicating with each other, and when you're playing a live show, you're communicating not only with each other, but with the audience as well. And so that's a key component. And I think we've always enjoyed that communication, for sure.
Yep.
We'd play the shows for free. What we get paid for is the hanging around and the traveling and being away from our families.
That's a good way to look at it, right? You do it for the love, right? And the traveling around supports, the payment supports that love, because something's got to support love, because love don't pay the rent, right?
That's right.
Love don't pay the mortgage, right? So, but it is long hours on the road, and but it's the fraternity of the Canadian musicians and Canadian artists that you see on the road out there, and that you may be performing with on bills. That kind of helps along with that family now, the road family, right? So you've grown into, being, in the folk and, genre. And I don't want to, people that have been around for 35 years are kind of like the elders of the, you know what I mean? From where those artists that you appreciated, you've now become that, right? So that I'm hoping that sits well with you.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we look at it that way, but I don't know. I guess you're only as old as you feel.
100%.
When you get down to it, I mean, I think we're. I know what you're saying, and I think. But for us, it's been consistent in that we have always treated others the way that we would like to be treated. And we learned that very early on from bands like Blue Rodeo, who were very good to us. Tragically Hip were very good to us. And both bands were very good to everyone that they
100%.
took with them and had them open shows for them. And so for us, that was like, okay, they're setting the tone for how to conduct oneself in the business of music and
in the community.
and in the community.
Yeah.
And so I think I hope that that's something that we've also carried forward, that we treat people the way that we would like to be treated. And I hope we have. It's not up to us to.
Jury's still out.
Well, we haven't heard anything, so no news is good news, right?
Yeah.
On that, and you're still keeping contact. You did some gigs recently with Paul Langwell Band. And,
Yeah.
Blue Rodeo out east.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So are these kind of homecoming things when you go to them? And
Oh, they're fun.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
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 I mean, those are long-standing relationships and connections, and playing music is such a. I mean, to be able to, like, going out and doing shows now, especially after COVID, that sort of community and that communion of people and an audience and it's everyone. It's this great energy that people missed.
Yeah.
When they couldn't do it, and it's a very positive thing to be a part of, and so I know that we do our best not to take it for granted, and it's all
take in the moment.
take in the moment and
Yeah.
appreciate that. I mean, it's all fleeting, and it will end one day. But while we can put some good energy into the world.
Yeah, when you're
Share that energy with others.
and the live audience picks up on that, right? As a music lover myself, we pick up on that. So when you're touring and you're sometimes you're splitting bills. You know what I mean? You open first or they open first.
Sure.
Then you play tunes together, and it's like a whole new collaboration again. And it's like, wow, that's a moment.
Yeah.
Right? Because that moment doesn't happen every show.
Yep.
Right. And that's what you kind of live for. And you know what I mean? I'm glad I came.
That's the live experience for sure.
I'm glad I came out to a live event because I wouldn't have experienced them both singing that song.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
Right here and right now with 200 people, 2,000 people, whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Absolutely.
I wouldn't hear all four of these bands play It's a Good Life if you don't weaken together. And I loved it when I heard Andy sing, and I loved it when I heard Bessie sing it. It's, you know what I mean? It's a moment, right?
Yeah.
So those for music lovers like myself, thanks for doing those moments, because we appreciate them just as much as you guys appreciate them.
Pleasure.
The song, The Truth About Us, what would you classify that type of?
Well, we wish we had written it.
Oh, sorry.
It was written by a friend of ours, Scott Garby.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Great tune.
Yeah, who's a school teacher, he's now a retired school teacher, and he had a fascination with the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and he wrote a suite of songs around the assassination, the day of the assassination. He wrote a song from the point of view of a motorcycle cop in the motorcade. He wrote a song from the point of view of an orderly at Parkland Hospital, which is where
They brought the
president was taken to. So it's a fascinating thing, and it was a project actually that we were involved in with Michael Timmons and the Cowboy Junkies. And The Truth About Us is kind of what would you call it? Like the
nose of the
it's kind of the
culmination of it's and Scott Garby and Andy's wife Andrea were friends, and Scott had passed along some, if not all of the songs. I don't know if he'd finished them all. But The Truth About Us was one that really resonated with Andy, and it was while we were recording Desmond's Hip City. And, I mean, it was lyrically, it was so different and so rich, so dense. And again, Andy identified with it and really sang it, connected with it. And, yeah, it's a great...
You can go through every line in that song, and there's a context to it and a meaning.
Yeah.
That is fascinating. I mean, it is. There's a line in the second chorus because it's kind of this amalgamation. It's The Truth About Us, subtitled "The Ballad of Lee and Marina," and Lee Harvey Oswald,
his wife,
and his Russian-born wife Marina. And so in the second chorus, the character of Lee sings, "Marina, Marina, it's cold and it's lonely when reporters are carrying your coffin." So when he was shot by when Lee Harvey Oswald was shot by Jack Ruby, his body was put on a plane to, I don't know whether they were taking it back to wherever they were. There was nobody at the airport to carry the coffin. So the reporters covering the story carried his coffin and put it on the airplane. And that whole song is full of references like that. It's a cheap Italian mail-order thriller. He bought the rifle that he assassinated the president with. I think he bought it from a mail-order house or something, and it was an Italian-made rifle. And so, the attention to detail is
it's a very good historical storytell.
Yeah.
And as a songwriter, it's entirely daunting.
Yeah. It's like, curse, it's foiled again.
But
there's perspective in it too as well, right? I don't know if it's just me, and as as a listener, and how it spoke to me was, it's kind of a story about, we can get guns as well. There's reference to, how easily guns are attainable, right? And the truth about us is, it to me was an umbrella kind of thing about, the culture that.
Absolutely.
The reason why these things happen is that, that sublime culture, that it can happen. Right?
You create the circumstances.
Yeah, perfect circumstances
for that kind of event.
Yeah. And as a listener, that's kind of like, how I kind of interpreted it. I didn't, I picked up on the Lee Harvey Oswald storytell and stuff like that. But as the song goes along, there's more.
Yeah, there's more to it than.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. There's
going to manifest our destiny.
Yeah. Right. So
got a piece in my hand and I'm loaded. Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where I picked up that. Yeah. You know what I mean? This is.
Yeah. It's a brilliant piece of songwriting.
It really is. It really, really
and
is.
It's catchy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good too. It's good riffs.
It's
right?
And you can dance to it.
And we recorded it and released it at a time where Pete Cash had left the band, and he was such a big part of the sound and the songwriting. It provided sort of a pivot for us. That Desmond's Hip City was a real departure for the band. I mentioned Paul McLeod and Gavin Brown, but that song I think also served as a pivot into moving forward.
A bridge.
I think so.
Yeah. Yep. And so let's talk about the truth about us in Canada. And the reason why I put it in that kind of perspective is when Andy and I were talking beforehand, I lived in the States and I missed home. I missed Canada. I missed us. Right? And that was, we came home in 2010, and in 2012, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission started. And that started to speak about the truth about us. And you guys are Downie Wenjack Fund artist ambassadors, and you just got back from the West Coast. Tell us what you guys do for the DWF, and how that moves you, and that part of the conversation. And I'm going to preface this. I saw you both play on Return to the Secret Path at Massey Hall, which was the third one, and it was an incredible show. I brought my son because he'd been part of the kind of a reconciliation journey we've had in our family, and to just see all those artists come together and sing all those songs was,
Awesome.
it was very, very moving.
Yeah, it was a magical evening.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So now you're artist ambassadors.
So the Downie Wenjack Fund was started by the Downie and Wenjack family, so our association with Gord Downie was we met the Hip early on, just as our first recording was coming out, and had a long friendship with them and collaborations with them. And when the Secret Path record came, Gord recorded the Secret Path record in 2013 and sat on it because he didn't know what to do with it. He was very moved by the story of Shanny Wenjack, and his brother Mike had sent him a documentary. I think it was a radio documentary, and he's moved to write these 10 poems, which became the 10 songs on Secret Path, and then at the end of 2015, he had a seizure and was diagnosed with, he had a tumor, and we know that, most people know that story. And in his, he had a couple of operations, and in that process of recovering, he was inspired to want to do another final tour with the Tragically Hip, but also to get the Secret Path out into, to be released with the blessing of the Wenjack family, which he had gotten. So I'm saying all this because part of what the Downie Wenjack Fund became was an organization that has gone to do a lot of outreach and educational outreach projects. And my understanding is that the Secret Path is now in over, I think it's close to 8,000 schools across the country. And I think for Gord, that would be an incredible thing. And it is an incredible thing. And it's changed. I think he helped change the conversation. And so, Downie Wenjack started a program called the Artist Ambassador Program. So when there's an opportunity, we were just out west in May, and Andy spends a lot of time out there. His wife is from Vancouver, and so I spent a few days extra there, and we went to a school there, and it's always different, and it's always interesting, but I just find it very rewarding. It's really a great way to feel connected with Gord personally, and with the Wenjack family, whom I've met many of, and it feels like a small offering, and one that I will continue to do, and I'm sure Andy will too if you want. I did one with Kevin Hearn in St. John's last week. Again, totally different than the one Andy and I did, but yeah, you never know, and it's a nice thing to feel connected with.
I had a conversation with Karen Ruiz in regards to Karen did Gord's hats from Lily Pad Hats on the final tour. So all the fedoras with feathers, and the country went through. It was a pivotal moment, right? Mm-hmm. When the Hip did their final tour, and when Gord passed, and their place in our history, in our musical history, is a pinnacle place. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And I had a kind of conversation with Karen a year after And I was in her shop, and we were outside, and I said, you know, it's tough when you think about how we're going to carry, you know, who's going to bring this stuff to us. You know what I mean? To these social kind of commentaries and these educational pieces. Songwriting is a gift of it. And I said, who's going to do that now? And she's like, I know, I'm struggling with it too. And I thought, you know what? It's up to all of us to actually, you know, continue to carry forward these conversations, and particularly the reconciliation conversation that, like I said, it's the truth about us as a country. When I grew up, we didn't really know about it. It was, we don't talk about that. That's the thing we don't talk about, right? Now we're talking about it. And so Gord would probably be, you know, I guess, you know, I think he had foresight. You know what I mean? I think a lot of songwriters have foresight, right? And he had the wherewithal. That's a hip saying. He had the wherewithal to have that foresight to be able to say, okay, this is, you know, my final, you know, besides, you know, Introduce Yourself after he, and then the re-release of Lester Parfait and the reworking of that with Bob Rock but really, you know, his goodbye and what he left for the country was the story of Channing, right? To carry forward individually in the legacy schools, what the Downie Wenjack Fund does for the legacy schools. And it's also in the corporate space as well, in legacy spaces. So, you know, it's a multifaceted approach to the reconciliation process that's going to take, you know, 100 years. I'd like to send Mike Downie a quick message on Canada Day, like 147 years left, 146 years left, 145 years. But collectively, to be able to, you know, and for artists to do that, it you know, not only Gord's legacy, but it's the country's legacy that we're trying to, you know, hold up to be a better country, because we, you know, we're not that chest pumping. I don't think we're like that. Like, we're super proud. You put a hockey game on and we win the hockey game, and if there's a Canadian playing on any team, it's a Canadian team. It falls into our basket, right?
It is amazing, you know, with the way that things are these days, how quickly things can be forgotten. And that's certainly what you're alluding to, is how important it is that we don't forget this, that we don't forget the work that Gord did in order for us to carry the work forward. And that's something that I think is very, very important. So, because it's really easy to get overwhelmed with information these days, and with, you know, people's attention spans. And this is one of those projects that goes on forever, beyond our lifetimes.
Absolutely. Some say reconciliation is a journey. It's not a destination.
That's right.
Right. So it's you know what I mean. If we want to be really proud of our country, we have to
Do the work.
We have to do the work, yeah,
work.
And all of us,
Yeah.
right? There's many nations within this nation,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And we have to acknowledge that and learn from that.
Yeah, and I mean, just the school visit we did in Vancouver, we were asked, you know, what's the biggest lesson in all of this, and it's listening. It's not talking. It's listening, and you know, that's a continuous lesson to learn.
And there are so many valuable lessons with those cultures.
I mean, we have so much to learn. You know, like we take great pride in putting our recycling out, and
Yeah.
you know, buying electric cars and all those things. But I mean, they've lived that existence forever. I mean, don't shit where you eat, and you know, take care of the place that you're living in.
And that those cultures teach you about that. You know, only take what you need, right? Regenerate and rejuvenate what you've taken, right? So that whole, you know, if we would just listen to that, you know, I think we might be in a better position. You know, just even listening to those ways of life that they have for centuries have proven that it is the good life, right?
Sustainable.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's one of the philosophies. It's live a good life, right? In our Western culture, live a good life. You know what I mean? But in the holistic sense of it, that culture of live a good life, you know, be good to your fellow musicians, be good to your technicians, you know, and then that circle will be good to itself.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm grateful for all those teachings. You know, I went on that learning journey, and it was an eye opener for me. It was life changing, right? And a big shout out to the Downie family. A big shout out to the Wenjack family. Much love to them because, you know, they support that. You know what I mean? They're the pillars of that story and that piece of reconciliation for our country. And I'm so grateful for them bringing that forward to teach our children. So,
Yeah, man. Yeah. Amen.
Yeah. Yeah.
What Jay is another word. So, when we talk about the latest music now, we're talking about 2 separate EPs that were written as one and recorded as one in one kind of session that was split up into 2.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to elaborate on that.
Well, it was actually just really a practical decision because we had recorded an album's worth of material in the spring of 2022 out in British Columbia with Joe B. Baker, and we wanted to release it on vinyl, and we weren't sure what the supply chain situation was at that time. So what we decided to do was to release 2 separate digital EPs, and hopefully after the second digital EP, the vinyl would be manufactured. So we left about 6 months for the manufacturing process. And we got the vinyl in 6 weeks, but it it gave us something to talk about. But really the 2 EPs, first EP is side 1, second EP is side 2. So
for us old schoolers,
yeah, it's just a process. You know, when you record and release new music now, it's so hard to get any notice, any attention, any traction. So we just were trying to think of ways that we could extend the attention span of our audience, stretch it out a little bit rather than releasing everything at once and then having it kind of be done after a month.
It's longer life,
Yeah.
and spoon fed.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah. But I mean, we're fortunate, and I don't mean that there's no criticism. It's just dealing with the realities of today. I mean, we're fortunate because we have a catalog of 35 years of playing, and so we can go out and play shows without ever having new material. But we want to have new material because it's part of what we do. So we record, and for us, recording has always been almost a reward for the work that we do on the road, because it's a whole different process. So we keep making records, although in this day and age, Josh and I have been talking for 10 or 15 years about whether we really need to make full record albums anymore, or whether we just record a couple of songs here and a couple of songs there. You just keep the internet is a voraciously hungry beast. So you just need to keep feeding it. And that's a way for us to keep feeding it, because we're not, neither of us are social media guys. So we're not feeding the beast by telling people what we're having for dinner tonight.
Pizza.
Now we are, though. Way to go, Frank.
Yeah.
But what we, if we're going to feed the beast, we want to feed the beast music.
Absolutely.
So that's what.
And
that's,
you can't.
That's what we're trying to do.
It's a creative collaboration. You can't stop that now.
Yeah, it's the reality. We're not. We're not.
I'm not done yet.
Yeah,
Right.
but we're also not going to, completely turn our backs on technology and reality.
It's just it's a new medium. Right?
It
So
is.
distribution has changed.
Yeah.
The medium's changed, and it's just, and it's going to forever change.
Yeah.
Right?
It's become fragmented. It's, but the interesting thing is, whereas we used to maybe appeal to roots rock fans in Canada, now through the internet, there are roots rock fans in Holland. There are, of course, the United States, but all over the world. So we can get our music out to
More
people
touch points
all over the world.
Yeah, more touch points.
Yeah.
Right? And that's fulfilling as well, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you really think about music as a universal language,
Yes.
right? And have somebody give you feedback from faraway land.
You suck.
No, if they give you feedback.
That's the internet as well, right?
Yeah. Well,
There's no filter.
blinders, right? Blinders and armor,
Yeah.
and, right? That's why you stay off social media.
That's exactly right.
You know what I mean? Or you don't allow comments on postings, right? Just love it. Just go with the philosophy of what our parents taught us. If you're not having anything good to say, don't say it. So, I want to thank you guys for your gifts of music to music lovers
Thank you.
out there.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thanks.
I really, really,
Frank.
Yeah, and Frank's our producer and he's our tech guy, and he's our. If you guys can't, we have to pump this out somehow. That get the smell aura of the wood fire that's going in the background right now. That Frank is making pizza in a pizza oven in the back here, and our guests, we do different things on different shows, like giving away a book to some people and other things. But today we're doing pizza, so that's part of the experience, right? Because you can't go on any road crew trip without pizza, and everybody loves pizza, and that's in the background. And that's Josh cued us a little earlier on where he said the word pizza, which means it's pizza time.
And I am going to take a photo of the pizza and post it on our site.
Perfect. Again, thanks for the music. Never stop, right? Because that, it gives gifts. It constantly gives gifts, and it's the gift that you go back to, right?
Thank you.
And pull it out again and go, wow. A friend of mine by the name of Mike Sheenan. Mike, if you're listening, thanks for this saying. He says, going to see the Skydiggers is like getting a warm hug.
That's nice.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So that, I give you guys a warm hug. Thanks for the hugs. And hugs.
Right on.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Frank.
So thanks for listening and watching. And if you're watching, go listen to it again. And if you're listening, go watch it. And if you've got any ideas for future shows, future topics, future guests, you want to introduce us to somebody you'd like to have on the show, hook us up down in the, down in the comments, down in the bio, the information, the links in the bio. Thanks for listening. More Northern Echoes to come your way. It's fun. It's just going to get funny. Pizza time.
Pizza.